right.
So we sub out Mike for
What up, Tim?
another cheesy guy.
What's going on?
Speaking of cheesy
we sub
bastards.
out a cheese head
for a
for
cheese
a
lord.
cheese seller.
He's the cheese lord.
I love
Cheese
that he
peddler.
uses the green screen for an actual.
Oh, hold on. I forgot to turn that on. Hold on.
He like this. The background is actually a green screen.
I was like, I'm so Irish.
You know what I should do? I should take a picture, or like use a picture of a green screen for sale as my.
As
Hold
your
on.
green screen.
I got you because I think that's the best.
Look at you
I think
guys.
you have it. I think you didn't click the button though that says I have a green screen.
You
I
have a
just-
green
I
screen,
did click the
Dutch?
button.
Oh, that's just your light's not bright enough then.
Do
Okay.
I sound
You're
like
fine.
I'm doing the quiet storm because I got this new mic?
No, you sound perfect so
You sound
far,
like
and
your-
I'm happy.
You sound like your
See,
name.
Mikey. So here's the
is-
thing, Mikey.
this is
Mikey
Dave
thinks
Rocket
that I'm
Reel.
going to be like mad.
Look
like
at Mikey's
I care.
face. What's the name of that one little Snow White dwarf that's like the
Oh.
happy one? You look
Bashful.
like the
Bashful.
Oh yeah, you look like the happy dwarf, the happy Snow White
Yeah.
one.
He's happy that his brand of microphone is working. I mean,
I must say that
Jesus.
the clarity with which your words are coming through is
I have
amazing.
here. Check this out, Dutch. I have but one production note, Miss Hannah.
Okay.
You're gonna mute your microphone for a second, and then on the back you have like a little indicator. Make sure it's on the heart. Yeah, it's tough. You gotta have to give it. A little-
Okay.
there you go.
There you go.
So what did that mean? What's the heart?
So the heart makes sure that it only gathers sound from where the light is, the little red light. So as long as that's looking at you, it can hear you perfectly, and it's gonna block out everything behind the microphone.
What are the other things?
It's mostly omnidirectional, so it can get all around you and all that
like
stuff.
for instance.
Okay,
it'll
it's
go-
giving the Matrix.
For
Yeah.
instance,
Yeah, like
when
if you had a
were
show
talking-
with
when
Go
you were
ahead.
talking behind the mic, your voice was lower.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
So, like,
Now
so
if
it gets
you
in the
had-
front.
with
if
normal,
if you did a podcast like with someone in your house
hmm
or at work and you were using that microphone has the ability for you to sit across from each other or around a table and like it pick up everybody.
And I'm
But
glad you
on-
said that because I'm
Yeah.
gonna set that up for my own podcast coming.
So you can
very, very
you can use
shortly.
that for that. So take it off the heart when you do that.
Okay,
right?
we'll get a tutorial going.
No, that's it. You already got it. I mean, these mics are all plug and play, so it should be. All right. So Tim's here. Tim has a
It's rocket power.
how long do we got you for, Attorney Anna?
Got me for the next probably 40 minutes.
Okay. So I kind of prepared to dig. Tim prepared to dig. So mine is more or less just a brief little thing to tell people about something that they may not know about.
Who told you
Oh.
Tim prepared to dig?
You
I
you
did
said
not
the dig
say-
was on celebrity politicians.
So why did you assume that Tim was doing it?
Oh, because you said Tim. I thought your message said Tim was doing it. Okay, never mind. Tim's not doing it.
Wow.
It was a collaborative effort.
we know what it
collaborative
is.
effort.
We know what it is, Mike.
You see how
But-
you see
but
how
I
it
wanna-
go?
I
All right.
want to read. I want to read
Noted.
an article for you guys. So this is going to count as my dig. Okay. I didn't write this. I have nothing to do with this. I did take a couple of notes that I would like to talk about with this though, because as Haas knows, Brandon Chubb was traded by the Broncos to the Dolphins.
Bradley.
Bradley Chubb. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Let's Go Brandon. As we were just talking about that. Bradley Chubb was traded from the Broncos to the Dolphins the other day, which, by the way, was like the final piece from the Tunsil trade. Like they keep using these picks, but there's an interesting thing about Bradley Chubb and about Nick Chubb from the Browns.
I can't with his last name. You got to be kidding me.
Chubbtown. Hey, this
Yeah,
is a
and that's-
famous freaking town.
Yes, and this is
Sorry to
and this
step
is
on
the
you.
they are no you know what it is. So like I figured you would know about this, but I want to tell you about the
Stop it, Mike.
about the history of Chubbtown, right? So Chubbtown is where Mikey is from. No.
Are you literally
uh,
trying to like sneak a dig in here before my dig? Are you
no,
kidding
I'm
me
just
right
gonna,
now?
This is not a dig. I'm just going to read this article.
He's trying to
Okay, so calm-
underdig me. You're trying to
This is-
underdig me.
He's trying to double dig.
He's trying to double dig on a
Haas,
Wednesday.
I'm wondering why is Mikey so racist? He doesn't want to learn about Chubbtown.
I don't know.
Bro.
Maybe because they more light skinned than him.
Yeah, colorism is a real thing, and I believe in it. I'm a proud supporter.
See, Mikey,
I've always
Anna
loved
is a couple of
colorism.
shades. Anna is Nick Chubb and Bradley Chubb shade of black. Mike
Okay,
is half a
don't
shade
do
darker.
too much.
Right. See?
Oh,
Right, so
why?
Nick-
Why? I'm special dark chocolate, baby.
So Nick Chubb is probably one of the best running backs in the league. Bradley Chubb is one of the best defensive players in the league. They are cousins.
Okay, I was
They
going
are
to
both
ask that.
they are both descended from a family who founded a town in Georgia. And the article I'm going to read from you is from the Supporter Report. It's from 2017. There's a couple other things I'll throw into this that they didn't touch on this, but I'm just going to read this article. So it's by Jamil Zainaladin. It says this: Georgia is one of the oldest states in the country and holds many seminal stories, historic episodes, and unusual occurrences.
You need
but there
choice of words there.
He wrote it, not me, but there are countless stories of brave and determined Georgians who have changed the course of their family or their community's history, if not the nation. We live on building blocks created by earlier generations, whatever they may think about our own present day accomplishments. Unless they know how we get here, we can't truly appreciate them all. Consider the story of the Chubb family, the ancestors of a very talented University of Georgia football player, and they didn't mention Bradley Chubb, but him too, Nick and Bradley Chubb.
Do you mean descendants or ancestors?
That the ancestors of Nick and Bradley Chubb.
Oh,
So,
okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
The
I was like,
story
wait, the young
begins.
guys are
And
the
when they say
ancestors?
ancestors, do they mean slave owners or do they mean actual ancestors?
You
Actual
will
ancestors.
yeah, you will find out here. So this if you
Okay.
guys don't know this story, I'm glad I'm reading it because this is an amazing story. I'm going to
Yeah,
share the screen.
It is.
So the story begins when 8 brothers, all members of a family with the surname Chubb, and all former slaves who were freed in North Carolina, moved to Georgia sometime around 1851, a full decade before the Civil War. Now, this is not from the article. This is from my notes. Recorded history of the Chubb family in North America dates back to 1775. Nicholas Chubb, with a U.S., the oldest known ancestor, is listed as a free-colored male in the 1820 census of Caswell County, North Carolina. John Henry Chubb, along with his daughter and 8 sons, were originally from North Carolina. Kenneth Jones, another descendant, is recorded by the censuses as early as 1830. So this article says that they moved there in 1851. There's a possibility that it may have been long before that. So going back to the article, the story begins again when these 8 brothers moved there in 1851 before the Civil War. Why freed slaves would head south, deeper into slave country, and not north to the free states is a mystery. The Chubb brothers first settled in Madison in Morgan County and then moved west to a plot of land in the vicinity of Cave Spring and Rome in Floyd County. Again, this is in Georgia. They would eventually form an unincorporated community that became known as Chubbtown, not to be confused with northern Chicago. What is unusual about this story is that the Chubbs were living in the state illegally, as Georgia law, go figure, prohibited the settlement within its boundaries of slaves who were freed in other states. Yet the Chubb brothers survived, put down roots, and kept their freedom. As farmers, millers, distillers, and blacksmiths, they certainly brought skills important to any frontier settlement, as the Cherokee had only been recently ejected from the area, to put it lightly. The Chubbs not only survived the destruction of the Civil War, as Sherman slashed his way south to Atlanta, but flourished, unlike many in the state, and continued to succeed despite Jim Crow laws coming later. By the 1870s, the residents of Chubbtown even received a post office and had enough property to maintain pasturage and fields, as well as building a church, which is today on the National Register of Historic Places. Modest homes, outbuildings, some of which are still in evidence. Education seems always to have been a priority for this rural Black community, which established a central colored school for its children, on land purchased by Clemmy Chubb. One of the early teachers of this school was Gladys Chubb. In one story recounted by Joyce Purdue Smith, when the school board closed Central, the high school, in 1942, Clemmy Chubb's husband, Alfred, persuaded the Board of Education to give him a cab from an old school bus, which he used to hook up his truck. This became the first school bus between Chubbtown and Cave Spring. And when the author goes on to say,
pause. Go back.
Yeah. Did I miss something?
I think this is.
Oh, I did.
important.
Okay. Yeah, I did. I missed the
teachers.
sentence here. Go ahead.
Its teachers held degrees from places like Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta University, Tuskegee, Morris Brown, and Harvard. Now, that's important. Hold on. That's important because go back down to it real quick.
Back up to it.
Yeah, back up to it, whatever. Those are HBCUs, except for Harvard. But Harvard, I'm sorry to say this, a lot of the founders of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity which was founded there at Cornell. They left places like Cornell and they matriculated to Harvard to get their master's, and then they left to become teachers at those HBCUs.
Word.
Why don't you continue on here? I'll
Where would you want me to start? Want me to start by
yeah.
And by teach, I mean not how to plow and work a mule. They were learning that at home, but how to do math and read and write. With secondhand books, children were taught to recite well-known pieces of classic poetry by both Black and white artists. The school grounds and buildings remained in constant use until the early 1950s.
I said a hop, a hip to the hip.
When the state required Black children to attend so-called separate and equal schools or equalization schools as part of a strategy to fend off judicial threats to segregation. Want me to finish? Want me to do the parentheses too? Okay. The story of this self-sufficient town of freed Blacks is no secret, though also not one generally known beyond Floyd and Polk counties, with the exception of one or two state agencies and readers of the book Reflections, Georgia African American Historic Preservation Network. I don't know why they put preservation in there twice. A newsletter published by the state's Historic Preservation Division. But others may soon hear more. Through the efforts of local residents in Floyd County, including some of the direct descendants of the original 8 Chubb brothers, there are plans underway for the restoration of the last remaining building on the Fairview campus in Cave Spring, and the creation of a museum exhibition that tells the story of the African American community's passion for its children's education. Shall I continue? Today, there are several hundred descendants of historic Chubbstown still living in Floyd and Polk counties, and by now elsewhere in the state and nation. And that brings us back to one of those descendants, UGA star running back Nick Chubb. What an arc of a story, with roots in pre-Civil War slavery times, Reconstruction, and into the 20th century Jim Crow era. The story of the Chubbs is a testimonial to the place of education and enterprise in the American dream of advancement.
Yeah, and I'll add a couple of quick notes to this. During the post-Reconstruction period, the Chubb brothers purchased more real estate, so they were actually able to, despite, post-Reconstruction, we know, especially on this show, and if you love history, that was a bad fucking time. These guys were actually able to become a self-sufficient community by continuing to buy little plots of land at a time. They remained and prospered in Floyd County while many Southern Blacks were seeking prosperity in the North. The town was spared destruction by the Union Army during the Civil War, with Sherman's, when Sherman went through and fucked everything up in a good way. The family's prosperity declined after 1916 when a flood destroyed the businesses. I've seen stories that said $900 or $200. I'm not sure if maybe the 900 is in today's money, but one of the original 8 sons purchased 120 acres for $900 in 1864 to originally grow the settlement. Both of the Chubbs, Bradley and Nick, are both trying to maintain and push the legacy for this, because this town, a lot of people think it was just a town for African Americans. There were a lot of white people who lived here. This was an open town. It was there, they happily allowed white families and immigrants to come and settle within the borders of Chubbstown. So, I mean, just the story of, like, there are so few of these stories. We have stories like Tulsa, and we have stories like Wichita, and we have stories like Philadelphia, where prosperous Black towns were destroyed. And this one in Georgia, the state that is bringing us Herschel Walker, somehow
also known as the crime
survived
capital of the nation.
Yeah. So Haas, I didn't know that you knew about this, but I figured you would. So just talk about like what this like means to you, and then we'll get the thoughts from everyone else.
What it means to me is that once again, we see evidence contrary to the negative stereotypes perpetrated about Black people. We see evidence of resilience. We see evidence of ingenuity. We see evidence of innovation. We see evidence of entrepreneurship. We see evidence of a vibrant work ethic. We see evidence of intelligence. We see evidence of families staying together, the father in the home, building the home, supporting the home. All of these things that work against the tropes that are often thrown out about Black people, African Americans, what have you. And the fact that not too many people know about this, not too many people know about the other towns that have been destroyed, that were also indicative of those same anti-stereotype type legacies. And it also reminds me of the wonderful Black men that I know today, that
make me blush,
that exemplify the exact same ideals and the exact same character traits that they say we are not possessing of. There are Black men that I know that are not with the mother of their child, but you better believe they drove their child to Spelman. They drove their child to Clark, Atlanta. They're active in their kids' lives.
Fatherless home.
Right. There are tons of my Black friends who are in the home with their wife and their kids. And that is, you do not believe, even today, you should see some of the people that I work around. When my kids come up to work and I have them with me and I bring them to work with me, they are surprised. You can see it in their faces. I've been around long enough to be able to read the face. Oh my God, he's got children and he's actually active and looks loving and da. And then my wife shows up and they're like, "Oh shit, he's with the mother."
He's gonna whoop one of them, right? Just watch.
You see what I'm saying? But I'm just saying, the education piece I get all the time because they're surprised I graduated from college and got a postgraduate degree. And then when people see me with my children, or they see us or we're seen just walking around, because that negative stereotype is so pervasive that to see a black man walking, holding hands with his kids, and they love him and they're calling him daddy and they're hugging up on him and making sure they got his hand, and he's walking with them and doesn't look upset about it, they're like, wow, because that's so anti the stereotype. You know, it's crazy. But going back to Chubbtown, that's just a microcosm of who we are. That's just a microcosm of who we are. That is not the exception. That is not the exception. That is the rule. More times than not, that is the rule. And what happens most of the time when those types of towns were prospering, what had happened to them? They got destroyed. Who destroyed them? The people that were putting forth the negative stereotype, because they can't have these examples out there for the world to see. So they must destroy them because they're trying to promote a whole different identity perception of these people. They're trying to dehumanize us. They're trying to make us, savages, irresponsible, lazy, blah, blah, blah. So these towns, Rosewood, Tulsa, etc., they had to smash those towns. They had to smash them because to let them prosper, what would our country look like today if there was still Black Wall Street, the original Black Wall Street? What would our country look like today? Do you think these types of stereotypes could survive if these towns were allowed to prosper? If they hadn't took all the land from the people to make Central Park?
How did most people find out about Black Wall Street?
Oh, Watchmen.
Yeah, from a fucking TV show 2 years ago.
They were like, "This happened for real." You should have seen the people when I said this happened for real on Facebook. You should have seen, really?
Yo,
Tom Hanks didn't even know about it until he saw the show.
That show was crazy, right?
No, like that show, that was real.
That did happen.
Yeah, but it's like how often in formal education is Black history taught as a core course and not an elective? Every school doesn't teach Black history.
And then when they do teach it, it's Martin Luther King. They don't even really touch on Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey or Haile Selassie or any of those people or the good part, the non-propaganda Black Panther Party. They won't talk about
you
how
you hear about the negative stuff about Marcus Garvey all the time.
Oh yeah, they'll tell you about the negative stuff.
Yeah, and there is negative stuff about Marcus Garvey, but but there's positive stuff too.
As with any human being.
I want to get Anna and Mikey's thoughts on this, but I did leave out one.
Sorry about that.
Brief thing I wanted to read here. This is from the New Georgia Encyclopedia. What I read before is they're saying this is all that we know about this community, because there's for a community that's still there, a lot of the history they kind of kept quiet, it seems. This is me adding here, because and that's probably part of the reason why they were able to make it, and that's why because there wasn't a lot of history.
Quick note too, ESPN did a story on Chubbtown.
Oh, well, we'll see
when Nick was getting ready to come out of the draft. They did a story on his town and where he came from as part of his background story pre-draft.
I don't know why they ignored it for Bradley, but what we don't know is how a community of free Blacks, and this is from what paper is this? This is different. This is from the clevelandbrowns.com. Where was I just at? What we don't know is how a community of free Blacks was able to prosper in the South during the Civil War. According to the New Georgia Encyclopedia, this is an amazing fact. Free Blacks made up a mere 0.3% of the state's Black population, not total Black population, in 1860. And they were concentrated largely in urban areas such as Savannah and Augusta. One story is that the Chubbs became friendly with a sheriff in nearby Rome. I don't know if that's white savior complex there or not, but Chubbtown survived the Civil War. according to town lore, because General Sherman left the town untouched. Nick's father, Henry, is quoted in this article saying, "I've always wondered how it made it. How did that happen? How did they migrate from almost Virginia? But they did it. It wasn't just a town for blacks. Whites were welcome too. Everybody just got along." The town is unincorporated, but has approximately 200 residents right now. So, Attorney Anna, Mikey, I'd love to get, like, I don't know if you guys knew about this place before or not, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
So for me, I had never heard of it, but it is not unlike some of the other cities that you all named, in which, as Haas said, when faced with oppression, we are forced to be resilient. Like, we just have to. And that means educating ourselves. Like, if we're going to do separate but equal, we're not going to let our kids not go to school. So we're going to just start our own schools. I think it speaks to the fact that, like Haas said as well, when some of us have opportunities to get higher and formal education, bringing that education back into the communities and being able to start and run those schools, and some of that is like, yes, wanting to create a hub and create things for ourselves. Some of that is protectionism. Like, we are able to protect one another and take care of one another and look out for one another when we have and can build our own communities. And it's interesting what you said, I think, about the uncle or whomever said, like, they wanted to know how it survived the Civil War. I'm not for certain, because I mean, obviously I don't know any of the dynamics of what went on down there, but I think it was just particularly interesting when you said that the town was open to blacks and whites, because you just have to think about, at that time, what kind of white person would want to live among black people. Like, at that time, that just wasn't a thing. So in some ways, I'm surprised that there was not more violence against them, unfortunately, but I am not surprised that, it was black and not, the white folks necessarily didn't want to be among them if the demographics of the town was just overwhelmingly black. But like I said, same thing with like Tulsa, Black Wall Street, and all those things. Like, when we don't have something, we make it, and we've always had to do that since we were brought to this country, and we continue to do that. And that is, how we even got HBCUs, is like, we're not allowed in these spaces. We're not made to feel comfortable in these spaces. So we have to create spaces for ourselves. And I think that it sounds like Chubbtown is a really great example of that, and one that has been able to endure over the years.
And what's interesting when you talk about the creation of HBCUs, it was a lot of rich white financiers that donated most of the money for those HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, their thought process was, we donate money to these HBCUs to increase our menial labor base, our porters and things like that. And then guess what? We started teaching law. We started teaching medicine. We started teaching engineering and things like that. And the unintended consequence, unintended by those people that initially financed those HBCUs, was that now, instead of porters and bagmen and things like that, we are producing mechanical engineers. We're producing lawyers. We're producing doctors and things of that nature. But by then, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. So, but curiously, when those things did start happening, funding started to dry up for those HBCUs.
Of course.
Just a little footnote.
Y'all covered it. I don't have to beat a dead horse. Y'all heard what they said. Y'all know they're right.
Mikey Famine from the UK here in the UK kitchen. This is a UK style kitchen. If you look in the background, you'll see bangers and mash in the fridge. And
so what we do is we leave this wide open so that we
we just leave it open, right? Because we don't our ice to be frozen all the way. We like our ice.
Mikey's getting his Mikey's getting his witty retorts ready for anyone who tries to break into the house.
You might have my television, but
you guys don't know what we're talking about, because that was from the Friday show. but it was good times.
It was a hootenanny.
It was a good ribbing.
I will also just say, and sorry, this is just kind of something that came to mind. And I was kind of talking about this a few moments ago, is that in public education in a lot of places, at least in higher education, but I know a lot of times in elementary and secondary education, Black history is not taught at all. You know what I mean? Like these things that
we talk about Martin Luther King. What are you talking about?
I mean, but but we don't talk about the FBI's role in all of that. We don't talk about that part of, like, we don't tell the whole story. We never tell the whole story. But even when it comes to some things, like even just inventions, you know what I mean? Like so many things were invented by Black people, like the gas mask, traffic light, all type of things.
Owners' intellectual property.
Right, which is stealing. So let's talk about it. But
if I can quote the greatest rock and roller ever, Elvis.
Right, who stole from James Brown. So it's just like
he stole from another dude too. They actually had the guy who Elvis sang like
or whatever
come in and sing and say, Elvis, you need to sing his song like he's singing it.
Yeah, I mean,
they paid this guy pennies on the dollar for what it was worth.
But isn't that the story of America paying nothing, free labor? That's how America became the greatest country in the world, is because when you jumpstart your economy with free labor, you just have an influx of capital. You can do anything you want because you have it for free. So like, that's why we're able to do that. We're able to be this country that's so wealthy because we did not pay for the labor that allowed us to engage in international trade. But that's another story. But what I'm really getting at is just the point is that we're not taught these things, and then we have always been trying to be held back from education. Here's the thing that I think, going back to the affirmative action piece, is why at every turn are and I'll just use Black folks, why are at every turn our Black folks were trying to limit our educational opportunities? Like, I just don't understand that. And it's really? Because and I don't know if people have been listening to the oral arguments, but Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson asked this question of one of the attorneys arguing basically against affirmative action, which this is what speaks to representation, because this is a question that Black people, Black women specifically, have been asking for years, which is, what is the difference between affirmative action and a legacy scholarship? Because neither one of the students who are getting into the school because of whatever program did anything to deserve it. There's no merit involved. So there's no, other than the fact that you happen to have an ancestor that attended or contributed to this institution. And if I know that 60, 70, 80 years ago, my ancestors were not allowed to go to this institution, there's no way that I'm going to be able to have a legacy scholarship. So you're going to cut me off at the knees, though, by saying, we don't care that we, as a country, I'm not going to just say white people, I'm going to say we don't care as a country that we brought all of your kids over here. We put you in slavery for hundreds and hundreds of years. We put your children in slavery for hundreds and hundreds of years. We're still dealing with the economic fallout of what that means for those people who also still live in a different but still existent system of oppression. But we're just going to say no, because that's not fair, because we, the majority, don't have that opportunity that you have, and we should have every opportunity that you have, plus more. So when we hear these kind of stories, you know what I mean? They're like, you just showed us the photos of the school. You just talked about where they were, the towns, how inviting they were, and how they were able to take care of one another. Same as these other cities that popped up across the country, and where Black people are migrating, in this case, further south, but in most cases, migrating north, able to put what they have together and create these towns. And then also, like, and Haas touched on this earlier, the benefit in burning that down, destroying those cities, is because we can't have anybody thinking that you're better than us. Because if people think that you're better than us, they won't want to or even equal, then they won't want to participate in our system. Our system only works if we're better than you. And at the moment that your system competes with our system, you're taking money out of our pocket, so we just have to burn you down. And it happens every single time. And even if you look across the country now, the cities that are, a lot of cities that are majority Black or overwhelmingly Black are usually very poor. Like Detroit is a city like that. Memphis is a city like that, where these cities have a lot of deep roots and could be and have historically been economically prosperous for blacks. But same thing in Detroit. 1960s, we had race riots. The entire Detroit downtown burnt down and has almost never been able to recover because we have discrimination in urban planning, where we built highways and overpasses from the cities to the suburbs, so that
Through
if you
those
don't
neighborhoods.
through the neighborhoods as
Or-
well,
yeah. Or around them to starve them.
or around them, so that if you to try to limit your access to them. And what happens is we'll create a fast pass for us to work in the city, but at 5 o'clock we'll be out of the city and you'll still be here to deal with the fallout of whatever that is. So I think we see that in Chubbtown. Like I said, that's a really great and shining example of something that has able to be successful and endure through the years. But unfortunately, the name of the game is these cities are destroyed because they are seeming to be prosperous in a way that all people want, Black people want. And I can't speak for all Black people most times, but I would just say this. I think we just want to be left alone from the racism, for real. Like, that's it. Like, no one wants to, you know what I mean? No one's trying to like do any more, do any less. Like, you're just trying to like go to school, go to work, mind your business, have a good life. But it's just like, even that sometimes is threatening to folks because you won't have to rely on them. So,
and here's another thing when we talk about the denials of opportunity historically, especially when it comes to education. You know, like you talk about the legacy scholarships and how, because for a long time Blacks weren't allowed to go to some of these schools, there's no opportunity for that legacy scholarship like you talked about. And that's why I'm incredulous and look at people like they have 7 heads when they say, oh, slavery's over, Jim Crow's over, separate but equal is over, etc., etc. Get over it. It was a long time ago. But the effects of those things are intergenerational and still ripple to this day. And I think that is what is you know, you hear that so often from people trying to explain away the systems of today that are just evolved from the systems of before. Just like we had the horse and buggy, then we had the first, you know, iterations of cars, and now we have electric vehicles that drive themselves and things of that nature. Racism has evolved the same way.
Right.
It was overt. You're Black, you can't have this job. You know, but now it's let's take
No
the
Blacks,
race
no Italians, no dogs.
Yeah, but now it's economic. We're gonna make this so expensive that you can't be there, or it's restrictive covenants that are still on some mortgage deeds for subdivisions, or it's
we're gonna make rules and change them when you actually win.
Yeah, like,
that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, or it's what was I gonna say? You know, you know what? We're gonna increase your chances of defaulting on these loans by, for no other reason but your skin color, charging you a couple extra points of APR or interest on your home loan or your business loan, which does what? Number one, it takes money out of your pocket. So now you don't have the money necessarily to send your kid to school because you're paying this exorbitant mortgage, or you're paying this exorbitant home loan, business loan, and it increases your chances of defaulting. You know, we as homeowners, those of us who own homes, we know what 1 or 2 points on your mortgage can do for your mortgage every month, and how much money that takes out of, or that you save on to use for other things, or not be able to use for other things. Now my son, who's great at engineering, I can't afford to send him to the engineering camp. You see? Mm-hmm. So now somebody else, or I'm living in a neighborhood where the property tax revenue is very low. So now, even though my son is great in engineering, he's not getting the proper programs at school because of where we live, and we can't afford to move somewhere else. Those are the intergenerational effects that we talk about. Go ahead.
Here's one, and I just found this out today on Twitter actually. So I learned that in South Carolina there was, when you graduated from law school, there was something called the diploma privilege, which is basically if you go to law school in the state, if you graduate, you get the diploma privilege of not having to take the formal bar examination until a Black student graduated from law school in the 1950s. And all of a sudden, everyone was like, we need to put in a test because we just cannot have this guy just out here. And so because of him, the first Black bar applicant, the bar now is required of all South Carolina law school graduates, simply because they could not stand to have a Black man not pass a test and become a lawyer and join the ranks. And we see the implications of that today because and I can just speak, from experience, like first of all, you have to go to college in order to go to law school. And it is incredibly difficult for a lot of folks to be able to afford college. And you have to you have to have a 4-year degree to be able to go to law school. And a lot of people can't afford that, or maybe they don't have time for it, or whatever their socioeconomic situation is. So that's the first barrier to entry. Second barrier to entry is it's standardized tests the whole way. And depending on who you are, where you come from, and your experience with testing, and also your familiarity with the subject matter, that can be incredibly difficult, not to mention the exorbitant cost of law school, which I won't even get into. But here's one particular thing. So when you take the bar exam, and most people don't know this, most people think it's just a really difficult test, which it is. Don't get me wrong. I've taken it twice. I've passed it twice in 2 different states, right? But here's the thing. In addition to taking the test, you have to pass something called character and fitness, which is basically a very extensive background check where they fingerprint you. They check all of your address history. They check your criminal history. They even check how much debt you have, because the theory is we don't want you as a lawyer to open up a practice, hold people's money in escrow, and then you get tempted because you have a lot of personal debt and all these things. But imagine you're the first person in your family to have credit. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you have certain debts and things like that. Or imagine somebody put something in your name because they didn't have any other choices at that time, and now you're negatively impacted. So there's all these very subjective ways to exclude people from participating in this process. And if you are just so happen to be fortunate enough to be able to progress, to be able to pass all of these tests, you will be lucky enough to join the 2.5% of the total lawyers in the profession that are Black. 2.5. And it's not, and we're so underrepresented. That's not even how much we make up of the population. We're 12% of the United States population. We don't even make up close to that in the profession itself. And it's overwhelmingly represented and overrepresented by white men and women. And it's incredibly difficult. And because a lot of us, sometimes because of the rigors of the job, depending on what type of lawyer you are, sometimes because of the fact that we are overwhelmed and burdened by just the pressures of being Black in the profession, a lot of us leave the profession in general and never come back to it, which is even, you can't blame the folks for wanting to leave, but also if you're not there, who's going to be there? And that we have that problem. And I think that those types of issues from all the way, and that's just, not even getting into higher education as a whole, but just talking about from 1951, at least we know in South Carolina till today, we're still having that institutional discrimination play out in a way that tangibly affects us. Because what does it mean that we do not have people that look like us participating in helping create and understand and enforce and our legal system? What does that mean? If we cannot participate, what does that mean for us? That means that we will always be, until we have meaningful numbers in some of these professions, we're going to be second-class citizens.
Yeah, because when you're only 2.5% of the legal profession, but how many percent do a lot of these defendants make up?
Right, and are overrepresented.
Yes, overrepresented
Hey
in
guys,
the legal system.
Hey guys, I love you, but can we do that for a dig? We're
Yes.
wasting a lot of content right now. Like we could have had a
Sorry.
whole
I'm sorry.
episode on it.
You know that we can.
I was like, all right, they'll wrap it up, and I'm like, man, they still going. Y'all burning
Because you-
content. Right
Okay,
now.
no. So y'all have
This is a
green
really
screens
good
of
one.
green screens. Two of y'all. Both of y'all have green screens of green screens.
They're BFFs.
Me and Tim.
Okay.
are
Beavis
buddies.
and
about-
Beavis
All
and
right, let's get
Cheesehead.
to the second dig.
Get to the second dig because I gotta.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna-
was
I'm
gonna
gonna
take
lose you.
30
I'm gonna
minutes.
lose
I
you.
got about
It's my fault. I'm so sorry.
I'm
I
gonna
got about
lose
2.5
you,
inches here
The
of cigar.
pause.
Of
Pause.
cigar.
We're going.
Just
Well,